Okay, hello everyone. The study I'm going to present is about diachronic analysis for metaphors in the framing of specific societal issues in public discourse. I particularly focus on metaphorical framing of election issues in the context of post-colonial Hong Kong. As many of you may already know, the election issue in Hong Kong has been a highly controversial issue since 1997, when Hong Kong transferred its sovereignty from Britain to China. In the past 2 decades, we've been witnessed increasing attention to the election issue and escalating demands for universal suffrage from the Hong Kong citizens. For example, one of the biggest protests is the Occupy Central protest, also called Umbrella Revolution in 2014, which aimed for genuine universal suffrage for the election in Hong Kong. In the 2019 Hong Kong District Council election, more than 70% of the registered electors cast votes, setting the highest vote turnout rate since the first District Council election. And in the most recent anti-extradition bill movement, one of the 5 demands of the protesters was double universal suffrage for the election of the chief executive and the legislative council. So in view of the changing democratic development in Hong Kong, I'm interested in how election, as one of the most controversial issues in Hong Kong, has been addressed by government officials, particularly in terms of metaphor use in their public speeches over the past 2 decades. For instance, here are 2 examples using different metaphors to talk about election issues in the public speeches by 2 Hong Kong officials in different time periods. In the first example, Anson Chen, the Chief Secretary for Administration in Hong Kong, said in 1997, "We've already drawn up a framework and timetable for those elections in May next year. I see them first and foremost as a stepping stone that will set Hong Kong firmly on the road to the universal suffrage that is envisaged in the basic law." This example conceptualized election in terms of a journey as evidenced in the linguistic expressions of timetable, stepping stone, and on the road to. In the second example, the Secretary for Justice, Rimsky said in 2015, any constitution development, including development towards universal suffrage, has to be built on the relevant legal and constitutional basis. Constitutional development or universal suffrage without the rule of law is no different to a house without foundation. So in this example, universal suffrage is understood in terms of building, as evidenced in the linguistic expressions as be built on, basis, and a house without foundation. So we see different aspects of elections in these 2 examples being emphasized by the speakers. The current study aims to check these changes in the metaphorical framing of election in Hong Kong over time. The theoretical framework adopted in this study mainly refers to framing in communication science and the conceptual metaphor in cognitive linguistics. So the concept of framing is constantly acknowledged in communication science. As defined in Antman 1993, framing essentially involves selection salience. It's part of the communication process that uses language as a tool to facilitate and review various ways of understanding and reasoning. And previous metaphor research has shown that a metaphor can serve as an important linguistic tool as both framing device and reasoning device. And Burgess 2016 proposed that since metaphors can be used to frame various societal issues, examining patterns of metaphorical frame variations in discourse is an effective way to reflect how conceptualizations of societal issues change over time. So my study may adopt this approach to check changes at 2 dimensions of time, the fundamental change and the incremental change. So simply fundamental change refers to the transformation of source domains of time, and the incremental change can refer to the transformation of mappings within a source domain. Here, I try to present the approach in a clear way. So when analyzing the incremental change here at the level of domain mappings, this study emphasized the mapping principles, which focuses on the frequently occurring metaphorical keywords under the source target domain pairings. So we argue that mapping principles captures the framing selection process at the level of framing frequency. So analyzing this approach, analyzing changes at the different levels, also align with the multi-level view of metaphor as proposed in previous metaphor research. The corpus I used includes public discourse in post-colonial Hong Kong. This is the organization chart of the Hong Kong government. I specifically look at the public speech by principal officials at the second level of the government. That is speeches delivered by secretaries for justice, chief secretaries for administration, and financial secretaries. So in total, the corpus includes more than 1,200 speeches by 11 principal officials with around 1,800,000 words. It covers 2 decades from July 1st, 1997, the day when Hong Kong transferred from a British colony to a special administrative region of China, to December 31 in 2017. So before analyzing the changes in election metaphors, we need to first identify the election metaphors from the corpus. So the first step to extract election instance from the corpus is that I select 8 keywords under the election domain, and then I search all the landmarks which are shown in this table in the corpus. In total, I obtained more than 1,000 instances of election issues in election issues in Hong Kong from the corpus. And next, within these election issues, I identified election metaphors following MIP-VU method, and we use WordNet and Sumo and dictionaries recommended in MIP-VU for checking what senses. In total, I identified 349 metaphorical election instances. And within these metaphors, I further identified 9 types of source domains. And we can see here, Hong Kong government officials predominantly adopt the junior metaphors when addressing the election issues. The integrated reliability test results are reliable, and all the data and analysis are uploaded on OpenScience framework at this link for free access. And then next, for the analysis of the changes in election metaphors, we analyzed the attention to the election topic of time, the use of the election metaphors of time, the use of source domain of time, and the source target domain mapping principles of time. I'll just show the results here. So in this figure, the solid line shows the frequency of election instance of time. The dotted line shows the frequency of election metaphors of time. So we found that the election issues occur relatively stable in the public speeches, meaning there's a continuous attention to this topic over the past 2 decades. And second, we found there's no fundamental change in the use of election metaphors, meaning the use of election metaphors are relatively stable over time. But we do find a fundamental change in the use of junior source domains. There's a decreased trend in the use of junior source domain of time. And then for the patterns of increment changes, because I only focus on junior source domain because of the low frequencies of other source domains. So the analysis showed that the election is adjourning metaphors either remain mostly constant or underwent clear incremental changes. So this table shows the frequently occurring metaphorical keywords under journalist estimate between the first decade and the second decade. We found both the two periods emphasized ultimate aim and step toward forward or toward achieve, reach, or attain, and timetable. And the differences in the first decade speak more about going, moving, and roadmap and the roadway. And in the second decade, emphasize more about gradual and orderly progress. And based on the keywords pattern and the context involving these keywords, I identified the constant mapping principles for elections metaphors in the two periods. So the mapping principle is election issues are conceptualized as a journey in that the guide sets out a timetable for travelers to step toward the destination of a journey, and the Hong Kong government makes schedules for Hong Kong people to attain the goal of universal suffrage. And relevant journey scenarios were also identified. One constant journey scenario in the two periods is setting out a timetable for attaining universal suffrage, as can be seen in examples 1 and 2 from the first decade, such as the Basic Law sets out a timetable for electoral development in Hong Kong. Our Constitution sets out the timetable. Also in example 3 and 4, from the second decade, we secured a timetable for universal suffrage. The universal suffrage timetable provides basis for our pursuit of democracy. And another constant scenario in both the two periods is stepping towards the universal suffrage for the election in Hong Kong, as can be seen in examples 5 and 6 from the first decade. The polls were the first step towards the ultimate goal of election by full universal suffrage, step towards the ultimate aim of universal suffrage. And also in example 7 and 8, in the second decade, we can also see a significant step forward, take a giant step forward towards the universal suffrage in the 2017 election. And for the variations of the frequent occurring keywords between the two periods, we have different mapping principles for elections journey metaphors based on the contextual information. And so the mapping principle in the first decade is election issues are conceptualized as journey in that the guide provides roadmaps for guiding travelers on the road to the destination of a journey, and the Hong Kong government provides policies for guiding Hong Kong people in the process of attaining universal suffrage. And the mapping principle in the second decade is election issues are conceptualized as a journey in that the guide is arriving at the destination of a journey with a gradual and orderly speed following specific traveling rules, and the Hong Kong government is attaining universal suffrage in a gradual and orderly progress following the Basic Law of Hong Kong. And accordingly, the junior scenario in the first decade is identified as moving forward on the road to and providing a roadmap for attaining universal suffrage, such as move towards universal suffrage, which is the ultimate aim of the Basic Law, headed down the road to our ultimate goal of universal suffrage. And also in here provides a clear roadmap for the development of our democratic institutions, and also formulating a roadmap for universal suffrage. And in the second decade, the speakers shifted to emphasize the journey scenario for maintaining a gradual and orderly progress toward universal suffrage, as can be seen in examples 13 to 15, such as Hong Kong should attain the ultimate aim of universal suffrage in light of actual situation and in accordance with the principle of gradual and orderly progress in example 13. The government will continue to work in an orderly manner towards universal suffrage, make steady progress in making election process more democratic in example 14, and also provides a useful means to effect a gradual an orderly progress towards universal suffrage in example 15. So in light of the increasing call for democracy from the general public, this consistent use of the Juni scenario of setting out a timetable or stepping towards the universal suffrage may imply the Hong Kong government's continuous efforts in comforting the public's emotions and easing the tension between the government and the public, a way to maintain social and political stability. However, they changed to emphasize the gradual and orderly progress in the case. Okay, thank you. Implying the potential hardship or difficulty on the journey to the destination in the second decade. These changes may serve as a rhetorical aim of reminding the public not to expect fast policies for immediate universal suffrage from the government, and that attaining universal suffrage for the election in Hong Kong is a long-term goal that needs great patience or endurance. So I will quickly conclude my study that analyzing fundamental change and incremental change in metaphorical frames of time can reflect social changes. So this approach can be replicable for metaphor researchers, focusing on corpus-based metaphorical frame analysis in public discourse of time. And also examining patterns for metaphor mapping principles provides a principal way to quantify the incremental change of a metaphor meaning of time. It contributes to corpus-based metaphorical framing analysis. And this is a reference list. And this study is part of my PhD project. And I would like to say thanks to Professor Kathleen Ernst and Professor Christian Burgess for their guidance, previous guidance on the project. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Winnie. And I think we still have 1 or 2 minutes left for 1 or 2 very short questions. Is there any question from the participants?
Christian has a question. Beth.
Hi, Winnie. Good to see you.
Hi, Christian. Good to see you.
I have a small question for you because what really struck me in your presentation is that when you had the timeline, you had these two huge spikes in the use of both election words and election metaphors. So, sorry, here it is.
Yes.
Right here. So about, what is it, 2009, 2010, we have this huge spike, and then we have another one in 2014, 2015.
Yes.
Did you look into the data to see what happened there? Like, why did the use of these words increase so much in those particular times? Yes,
that's a good question. And actually, because this spike shows that there's an increased attention to the election topic between the period of 2007 to 2010 and 2013 to 2016. The spike is at 2014. And based on the historical background of Hong Kong, and I think it may, due to the August 13, this spike due to 2 events. One is the August 13, 2014 decision by the Chinese government to rule out the universal suffrage for the elections of chief executive in Hong Kong. And also the 2014 Occupy Central protest may also cause the increased attention to the election topic. And here also there's a decision in 2010 made by the Chinese government. Also the decision rule out the universal suffrage for the elections in Hong Kong. And I think these 2 decisions and the protest may be the reasons that caused the increased attention to this issue in their public speeches.
Okay, great, thank you.
Winnie, in light of what you just said, could you show us another graph where you said that there was a decline in metaphors about elections. So could you comment on this? We are seeing a lot of spikes, and does it coincide with 2010 and 2014? And when you say there's a decline, could you comment on this irregular shape graph? Because there
Okay.
seem to be spikes as well.
Yes, I think you are referring to this decreased trend in the use of junior source domain over time here, because for this figure, we found the use of election metaphors are relatively stable. And for this one, based on the statistical results, we found a negative association between the use of source domain of Juni and the time. So meaning the use of Juni source domain decreased over time. And I think it may related to the languages the public speaker, the speakers used in their public speeches. They may vary according due to a lot of political events happened in Hong Kong, and they may adopt other metaphors or other language tools to talk about this issue. Yes.